today is actually a former colleague of mine at Google. She is a lover of yoga, wine, HBCUs, Beyonce, and travel. She's actually an avid traveler. She's been to, I think, 6 out of 7 continents. Am I right in saying that, Eartha?
Yep, you are. I don't know that I'll make it to Antarctica, but yes, on the track.
Well, not right now, obviously, with everything that's going on. But Eartha is also the founder of Career Fairy, who helps millennials find their magic so that they can flourish in their career. I mentioned that we were colleagues at Google. She has also maintained the 9 to 5 at Google, where she builds and scales global programs to help teams succeed. She's born and raised in the US Virgin Islands. She is currently living in the planet of Brooklyn, and she is a devoted wife and mother. Eartha, you have so much going on. Like, I love this. Thank you so much for taking out the time to connect today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Excellent. So I would love to talk to you about the Career Fairy and helping millennials find their magic. I'd love for you to take us specifically back to the moment that you decided to set up the Career Fairy. What was the inspiration for you?
hmm I was thinking about this as I always tell the story. The career theory has been something that's been swirling in my head for so long. Like many folks, it wasn't an idea that came up overnight. It was an idea that was built off of several years of experiences. So several years ago, I was leading this program at AT&T that helped these young graduates from college come in, learn the business of sales, and then graduate and go into full sales positions. I realized that I was very dedicated to my graduates and I enjoyed that piece of the program more than anything else. So instead of just saying, hey, Dave, you did great in small business, go sell in Delaware, I really took this hands on strategic approach into making sure that each of my graduates went somewhere that they could flourish. Somewhere that if they were from a big city, that we weren't putting them in a small town because usually that's a bit of a mismatch, or if they had a particular focus on large clients, they weren't going to work with teeny tiny clients and so on and so forth. So I realized that once these folks got placed, well, I realized that my colleagues weren't doing that. And then once my teams got placed, they kind of naturally started calling me for the next part of their career. They would say, hey, I'm going into performance review. How do I approach my manager about promotion? And we'd end up doing some coaching. Didn't know it was coaching at the time, but that's what was happening. And then they'd call and say, hey, Eartha, I'm ready for something new. How do I think about a pivot? And we'd do some more coaching. And then I realized that folks that weren't even on my team started calling me too because the word started to spread. Can you help prep me for an interview? Can you give me some tips like you gave to this person? And I said, sure, let's do it. Again, not realizing at the moment that I was actually doing this coaching. But a friend at some point had shared this podcast with me that I love called Package Your Genius. And the host shared at this on this one episode that the thing that comes easiest to you is likely your gift and your talent. And it resonated with me so much, and it still resonates with me today because I realized this is something that comes easy, that people seek me out for. I'm not even proactively sharing this stuff. Maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something that I could scale. Maybe I could turn this into something and continue to help people. Right around the same time, so always thinking about like the magical moments and stars aligning, I moved to Silicon Valley and I'm immersed in this culture of startups and founders and everyone trying to be a founder of something, but also realizing that most of us won't ever be founders and not everyone wants to be a founder. Not everyone wants to go build and scale a company. Most of us are going to be working and that's totally okay. Most of us will want to work for another company, or a lot of us. And I figured if we're going to have to do this and spend our waking hours at work, why not do it in a place that feels right, that feels magical, right? A bit of a big word there, right? You can define magic a whole lot of ways, but a way that in an environment and in work surrounded by people that you like and somewhere that you could flourish. And so the career fairy was born.
That's fantastic. And it's such a good point about, some people are not like, they're not the kind of people that want to found startups. I think like that's like one thing working in tech I often hear where, especially in like Silicon Valley, Bay Area, it's almost like people almost assume that's going to be your next step in your career
Yep.
if you working in Silicon Valley. I think that's like, it's really interesting. And for you then, like when you've been advising people, like one thing that you mentioned is like finding their magic. So
Mhm.
in a world where, they may be hearing like all of these external forces saying, hey, you should set up your own startup, like you should be out doing your own thing. How do you help people then find their own magic so that they can develop their career based off of like what's magical to them?
That's such a good question. And I think the part about what's magical to them is key, right? So for me, finding your magic is finding that sweet spot where you are doing work that's important to you. You are doing work that brings you joy, that you enjoy, and that you're making an impact at the company that you're working with, right? It's a place where you can shine brightly, where you enjoy the people that you work with as much as the thing that you actually do. I always share the story that at one point in my career, I was in the absolute worst job. It was a job where I learned and grew a ton, but it was a job where I just couldn't flourish. I could not shine this bright light that I knew I needed to shine. And early on in this role, I'd stayed entirely too long, probably about 2 years. And early on in the role, I kept thinking, well, maybe this is how high performing teams work, right? This team is a high performing team. I'm just not used to this. I'll try harder. I'll push harder. Well, maybe this is what I need to do to be a director, right? My manager's a director. She's well respected. And it just, day was so bad. It got to the point where I physically felt the impact of that role. I gained weight because I wasn't eating well. I was stress eating. I wasn't going to the gym enough. My personal relationships suffered. And I realized like this is the complete opposite of what I should be feeling like at any point. If I cannot flourish in my personal life, there's no way I can flourish at work. They're inextricably connected, right? Which is one thing we don't always think about, but because we do work so much, it's going to impact our lives and vice versa. And when I finally got to the point, like, this is not where I should be, I've made a plan to get the heck out of there, right? And I realized a place for me to shine, a place where I feel like I can really live in my magic is someplace that was not that, right? That I had a manager that was supportive. We had a great work life balance. I was surrounded by inspiring people. I could do the things in my life that brought me joy, like work out and still travel and enjoy my friendships, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I think about finding your magic and defining what that means to you, it's really this process of self exploration and understanding what you don't ever want to do, the types of environments you don't want to be in, and then making sure that you have a plan in place to create that environment for you. I'll stop there because I feel like that was a whole lot.
Oh, I thought that was great though. I think like
Okay.
I, in particular, I think everybody at some point in their career does find themselves in like one of those awkward positions where they're working in a team that just doesn't suit what their own way of working, but also as well their values and principles. Like where it's
Absolutely.
like what is happening here, it doesn't really reflect who I am. So I think like what you're saying there about like really kind of figuring that out for yourself, like what's important to you, like will give you a great direction of like where you should take your career to next. And I think like one thing I remember you telling me actually a while ago when we worked together was uh I think you almost said it in passing, which I really appreciated as well. It was kind of like it's almost like you just need to like prioritize, like stack rank them, and like don't just think about it, just write it down and like remind yourself of that at important moments. It's like is like breaking my back working 15 hours today worth it if my number one priority is my family, you know? And I think like you said that to me in passing, and I
Absolutely.
still remember that to this day. So very much appreciate that. I should have you should have charged me a consultancy fee for that. But
I love that. Wait, Dave, I'll also add really quickly to that those values almost always never change, right? But the way you approach them does. So at this point in my career, like I'll say early on in my career, I was like 15 hours a day. I'll do that, not a problem. I'm on this like up and to the right path. Let's do it. Now though, I have to like rethink some of that. And it's not as much as a direct shot to the top for me. It's more of a what's sustainable. Now that I'm a mom, now that I want to be able to shut down at 6 o'clock, right? And be able to say my magic that I can give to this company and that I can get ends at 6 on the dot, and I cannot log on after that. So I just want to add that yes, we should have a plan in place, but be prepared to iterate on that plan and flex as your life changes because your life will go in ebbs and flows continuously just based on where you are in your personal journey too.
and in that change itself, then like let's just say if there is a moment where you've you've sat back and you've done that reevaluation and you've realized, hey, there's a need to change here. Um, how can people like set
Yep.
themselves up for success in kind of pursuing that next change?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I always help my clients through this with some soul searching. And soul searching sounds so deep. You're like, well, do I need to search my soul for a career? But again, we talked about them being inextricably linked, right? Your personal life and your professional life. So I think it's critical to stop and say, let me do this evaluation. What's important today? What's important tomorrow? What are some things that I absolutely don't want to do anymore? What are some things I do want to continue doing? What are the tools that I enjoy using? I had a client who was a creative through and through, and she was looking for a pivot. And she, in her mind at least, initially wanted to like pivot to this really like professional in a box type of operations role. And we started doing some of this soul searching together. And I asked her, like, what are the things you're using on a regular basis? And she's like, my camera, Adobe, this, like all these creative tools. And I stopped and said, okay, but you want to do a role that's like this, you will never pick that camera up, right? So even thinking about tangibly what you like to do and the things you'd like to interact with is critical in that soul searching piece. So I think once you've gone through a bit of that process, you can start to underscore what's important for you, where the priorities lie, and then what's that X factor that you're bringing to that table, to your table, that magic, I think, and then help. You can start framing your story so that you can tell yourself, okay, I know that I'm good at these 5 things. I want to do these types of things in this type of environment, and then start charting your path to what that environment looks like and meeting those people.
Uh, that's fascinating. So like it sounds like that what you're kind of saying there is like even before you kind of like take the next step, so it's really about finding the foundations of like what the story that you're going to
Absolutely.
tell is going to be. And on that then like, once somebody has like found their magic and finds what is important to them and their values that's important to them, like what kind of advice do you give them then to like
Mm-hmm.
really convey their story in an interview, or maybe it's in like a job performance review where they're like pushing for that promotion?
Yep. I think the key here, you'll love this as a storyteller. One, it's to consider your audience, right? But even before you start considering your audience, it's building this distinct story. We have, find the number, 1,000 thoughts in our brains at any minute of the day. And a lot of times you're in an interview, you're in a performance review, you're on stage, you want to fire all of those thoughts out at once, and you end up kind of freezing because your brain is overwhelmed, right? So my first advice is like streamline those thoughts by coming up with a quick storyline, coming up with those bullet listed items that you want to share about, here's why I deserve a promotion, here are the achievements I had, here's why I'm the right person for that role. Once you can actually spend some time narrowing your thoughts, practicing them a bit, you've kind of hit the nail on the head because you're setting yourself up for success. Your audience, though, that part is that's where you get to tailor it. Always think about what's on top of mind from my audience. And if you go a bit further, what's on their hearts? What are they interested in? So performance review is a great example. You might walk into your performance review and want to tell your manager, here's the 10 amazing things I did, and let me tell you why I'm amazing. Let me beat my chest. But if you stop, what's top of mind for your manager? Sure, your success if they're a good manager, but also the success of their team, right? And their personal success. So how are you retweaking your story from being, let me tell you how amazing I was, to more, here's what I did, here's the impact it had on the team, and then by extension, the impact it might have had on them.
That's really good. I love the framing of your story with like the audience in mind there, and almost placing them at like the center of your own story, which is really cool. I
Mhm.
like the I feel like that so much of this is about before you even try to like go into that interview, that performance review, you put it perfectly. It's like map out like what the story you're going to tell is. um and like I've definitely sat in, like I've had people where when I was at a previous role, I interviewed somebody and we literally spent 25 minutes talking about music and like 5 minutes talking about like why they would be good for this role, because like through like our discussion about music, I was kind of
Hmm.
like, this guy clearly is like a really just like genuine, like open, honest. They clearly love working with people. They love connecting with
Mhm.
people. Uh, and I found like I was almost kind of like sold on like them like 90% by just that conversation.
Yeah,
So it's really, I
absolutely.
really believe that what you're saying there is so, so true. Because as an interviewer, I've definitely felt that whenever I connect with somebody in the interview. Um,
It's so critical. And I think the people who do it well, I'm not sure if the interviewee at that point was like, let me go in and connect personally, but the people that do that so well are the most brilliant people to watch. I had someone in my career tell me once, she was giving me some coaching on like how to approach this very strategic, this meeting. And she basically said, like, I know that you're the expert, but based on this audience, let them feel like they're the expert. And this was very early in my career. I was very arrogant. I was like, but I'm like, no, I am the expert on this. They called me. I shouldn't believe this. And she's like, I get it. However, I'm telling you about this audience. Sort of let them drive, plus one their ideas, like encourage them, do it in a bit of a different way. And the meeting went phenomenally because of her advice. And I circled back with her and I said, I love how you are such a strong, brilliant person and a charismatic leader, but you're okay with letting other people be in the driver's seat. And she said, oh, no, honey, I am not in the back seat ever. I'm always in the driver's seat, whether or not everyone else realizes it. And I think that's what that brilliant, like a brilliant person who's walking into this performance review, going to get the outcome that they want, but maybe they've positioned themselves, their story, their energy, all of that in a way that makes the other person feel like they're in the driver's seat.
I love that example. That's actually really great advice. Um, uh, Pivoting slightly though, what is
Sure.
your favorite story of somebody taking your advice and seeing success from that?
Ooh, oh, Dave, let me think. I'll tell a recent story, and I'll tell this one because it's around storytelling too. So, at the beginning of the pandemic, I started offering these free office hours to really help folks who had been impacted by what was going on, had either lost their jobs, needed to pivot, etc. And it was just a 30-minute session, true like brainstorming, whiteboarding session. And I met with someone who had been getting lots of job interviews, getting pretty far in the interview process, but never quite closing the deal. And through this discovery process, I'll save you the the minutia. But through this discovery process, I think we realized that his story just wasn't tight enough. He had like this pitch that was just so long-winded, so all over the place. He tried to paint himself as too many things instead of really like honing in on what was important to him and what was important to the person listening. And I think he was making it far in these interviews because he kind of showed up as the right person, but never was able to hit it home. So really what we did is I offered him some coaching on elevator pitches. And I said, I wonder if you tried these three things. And it was really like trimming the fat because good Lord, was it long and long winded and just like, again, kitchen sink approach, right? Like, let me tell you about my 50 strengths versus like the five strengths that are important to this role. And also being able to pivot that based on the audience because the pitch that you give to a recruiter is totally different than the pitch that you should give or the conversation you have with a manager. So I helped him really refine his elevator pitch, be able to pivot it very quickly, and then pivot it to the audience that he was talking to. And I got a text from him probably about 2 weeks later, and he's like, oh my gosh, the pitch is working. And I said, oh, tell me more. And he's like, I moved very quickly from the recruiter. She actually told me something like she loved the way I put that together. And I said, well, that's amazing. And not every story is that easy, right? Not every story is like, you go change these three words and you'll do something differently. But in this case, because he had a lot of the elements there, he just needed to refine his story a bit. And of course, think about his audience. That's probably one that's top of mind that makes me the most proud.
That's a
And
really
he did get a new job.
that's that's a great one to be proud of. And then
Yeah.
I know that you are exceptionally busy. I mean, you've got the job at Google, you've got the career fairy, you've got, I mean, your own family,
Life.
you've got so much going on. But what is next for the career fairy?
Oh, what is next? Us techies, Dave, we thrive in the world of scale, right? So my thought is now, 2020 was such a pivotal year for me and for the firm and for the world. So I'm trying to think about how I can scale my impact and be able to reach more people more effectively. It's only one me. I have to be, like you said, in five different places at many different times. So I'm thinking creatively of ways to scale that impact in other ways. I'm getting ready to launch a group coaching program. One-on-one coaching is pretty pricey. It's a hell of an investment and it's totally worth it, but it's pretty pricey. And recognizing the state of our economy right now, not everyone can afford one-on-one coaching, but they would benefit from the expertise of a coach plus some inspiration from other people. So I'm getting ready to launch that. And then also just thinking of ways to spread the nuggets a bit through things like workshops and speaking engagements where I can talk to an audience of 100, right? Inspire 100. Maybe I get 2 or 3 clients and that's fine too. But if someone can take one of those bits of nuggets, apply it to their life, and then go have an impact and find some magic of their own, that to me is what's critical for Career Fairy and will help me scale, make me feel good and happy inside, and I think help change the world. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what we are all trying to do, right? We're not trying to, it's hard to boil the whole ocean, but if we can leave our impact on our little part of the world, that'd be great. And that's really what I hope to do.
And I really admire the fact that you are just supporting so many people to enable them to tell their stories. So I absolutely really admire the work that you're doing. I'm really excited to see how the group sessions go, because I feel like as well that will be a great diving board for some people as well who might be a bit like, I'm not sure about one-on-one, but it's almost like once they see the benefits coming through, they may almost kind of like then go on and realize, actually, I do need that, just that extra drive, like with one-on-one engagement. So I think that's like such a good idea. I'm judging that based off of my experience of going to like gyms, where I've like been going to like gym classes, and now like myself and my girlfriend are on the verge of like getting a personal trainer, just because we're like, yeah, I think we're at that point where we need it. But Eartha, thank you so much.
And I think the personal trainer brings a whole level of expertise.
Exactly. Like also it's like more bespoke and personalized to the person that's receiving it. And like at the end of the day,
exactly.
Like, that example that you gave of like giving that feedback of like being able to trim down the fat and everything else, that's not the same advice that you would give to a group of 20 people. So I think that's why it's so important that one-on-one engagement is always going to be that much more valuable. Yeah. But Eartha, I just want to say thank you so much again for joining today. This has been really, really fascinating. Also, like I've learned a few things here. So again, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today.